Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Patron Hangout number 90. Whew, 90. I'm always amazed at the numbers now. It's like crazy. So I hope one day it's Patron Hangout number 500. That'll mean I haven't quit and everybody's still around. So that'll be great. First, I want to welcome everybody to the chat room. This is a patron-only chat room. And if you'd like to be involved in it, please do click the link below and join Patreon. It's $5 a month, and you can come to all 8 lives and skip advertising if you don't want to pay to get rid of it. And you can participate in our community. And it's a really nice community. So welcome everybody here. Lauren is here, and Marie is here, and Aunt Deanie is here, and let's see who else is here. CJ is here. Oh my God, my glasses are crap today. I can see better without them. Wait, this is weird. My for whatever weird reason, my reading glasses, I don't need as much anymore, and my distance vision is getting worse. So go figure that one out, because it's supposed to be the opposite way as you get older. But anyway, very strange. So again, Marie, CJ's here, Martin is here, and others are be coming in a second. Lisa N is here. Let's see. Wait a minute. Lisa N says, "Hi, everyone. Those responses Pat got from Sandra Lean's video were eye-opening. I know we have seen them before on Bamber, for example, but even so, it is shocking to see these myopic views on display." Lisa, first I'm going to talk about, this is a very UK show to begin with today. I'm going to talk about Madeleine McCann. I have to, because of the search in Portugal. And then I'm going to talk about Sandra Lean's response to me, which I found very illuminating, I tell you. And also later on in the show, I'm going to be doing a bit on the Beaumont Children, because I'm trying to do an Australia, New Zealand show this Friday, because I'm leaving on Saturday on vacation, and I wanted to get a show in before the weekend. And the recommendation often is the Beaumont Children. And it is not a case I can do a full show on. It just isn't. But there's a couple interesting things I want to say about that case. So I'm going to do that today. So I can at least do as much as I can on the Beaumont Children. I'm also going to be talking about some other interesting things in the news with Innocence Project, one of my favorite groups, not so much. And some of the concepts behind it, which I've been getting some interesting emails on, shall we say, or messages about. So I'll get to that later. And then there's other stuff. So we got to get to Madeleine McCann. We have to. So they're off in Portugal right now, the Germans, and they've got supposedly the Portuguese are cooperating with him, and the British team is in there to, I guess, observe. So there's a 3-part team, the claim is, to search this particular reservoir about, I guess, 30 minutes or so from, or maybe it's 30 miles from Praia da Luz, where Madeleine McCann went missing many years ago. And what are they looking for, and why are they looking there? Let me tell you some interesting stuff about this, because I just find much of this ridiculous. Now, I just did a short video on the search, which you can, I'll link that below. But I want to address some other interesting things about the search. Okay, now I can't see. It's this. Yeah, I don't know which way I see better. But anyway, this is I did this one on the search. This is the reservoir they're searching at, and that's my book on the left, which is can't be found on Amazon because McCann's got it pulled, but it can be found elsewhere. And this is quite amusing. They're out there and they're destroying lots of trees and brush, looking for something, whatever that something is. Okay, now I want to read you something this is from 2020, okay? And I think this is interesting because Hans Christian Wolters, he's the prosecutor, the German prosecutor, who Mark Sonokonoko, the Australian journalist, did an interview with and pretty much destroyed him. And Wolters was all over the place, and he caught Wolters in so many inconsistencies, and that Wolters came off looking really bad, like he didn't really have anything. His suspect, Christian Bruckner. who is the guy he believes abducted and killed Madeleine McCann. But now listen to this from 2020. Here's the headline. German police don't need Madeleine McCann's body to prove suspect murdered her. Okay, well, theoretically that's true. It could be true if you had, for example, after you dug up his location in Germany and you found some kind of video evidence, for example, or photo evidence, pictures of Madeleine in some kind of cage or being some kind of state of being dead. If you had a video of you attacking her and killing her, yeah, that would work. But they already dug the crap out of Germany and came up with zero. So, but Hans Christian Wolters said authorities simply need to be convinced Madeleine McCann is dead to put the suspect on trial. Convinced. Well, again, how do you convince them that he killed her? You have to have literally physical evidence, or he has to confess. He has never confessed. He said he didn't do it, even though he's a scumbag and a predator, a sex predator. He is that. But he's never confessed. And these tips that Wolters seems to get in seem to be coming from somebody who once knew him, that they interviewed and said, oh, he said this in a bar, something like that. They claimed originally to have some evidence from Prior Deluge with some phone stuff, which all came out to be crap too. And here is a nice another answer he gave early on. All right, let me find it. He was asked if he had any forensic evidence putting Bruckner inside the flat where Madeleine was sleeping. He replied, I have an answer, but we have decided not to divulge this information. I don't know. What do you think that answer is? No. He goes on to say, I can't say yes or no. Why not? Because you don't want to admit the truth? As that would bring 1,000 other questions, and I cannot go into detail. Yeah, here's what the questions would be, Mr. Wolters. Is there any evidence proving that Bruckner was in the flat with Madeleine? No. Okay, then how do you even prove that she was abducted or by him? That's 1,000 questions I don't want to answer. It's unbelievable. It really is. Oh my goodness. So now back to where they're at the moment. Okay, we have some great statements right now. So here's one of the great statements. Madeleine McCann, Portugal's search to extend into third day, say sources. Now look below. Operation on banks of reservoir 30 miles from where Madeleine went missing in 2007 have been due to end on Wednesday. So essentially they gave themselves a 2-day window, which I find kind of odd in itself because there's a lot of area in the reservoir if you're going to actually go dive into it, and a lot of area around it. I don't know how the heck you wrap this up in 48 hours anyway, but they were planning that. And I guess the concept was they were going to know exactly, what was there. Only 2 days have gone by and they're like, crap. So we better add another day on there because we're coming up with nothing. So anyway, that's Christian Bruckner. And this is, oh my goodness. I don't know when he said this. This is Wolters. Latest Madeleine search will take time. Well, dude, you've been at this for like 3 years now and you're coming up with nothing. Okay, here's some other statements which it just amused me. Okay. Police believe Madeleine was killed in Portugal. Now, mind you, in 2021, police said they believed that Madeleine was killed in Portugal, changing their theory that she had been taken abroad following her disappearance. They thought, after naming Bruckner as a suspect in the case, police said they initially thought he might have taken Madeleine to Germany, prompting a search of places he had lived previously. So now you see they had this theory, and the theory fell flat when they went and dug up every place around his home and any place he had. They just dug it all up and they came up with zero. Now, some people claim that they came up with some kind of evidence on some flash drives or something. Oh yeah, there's obviously photos of Madeleine and videos of Madeleine on the flash drive. No, Could there have been child pornography? Sure. But was it Madeleine? Absolutely not, or he would have been convicted. He would have already been charged and probably convicted. They do not, in my opinion, have a shred of evidence that he abducted, that first of all, that Madeleine was even removed from the apartment by an abductor. 2, they don't have any proof, actual proof that it was Christian Bruckner. And 3, they've got no physical proof that Madeleine was killed by Christian Bruckner or was even killed by an abductor. That's where they're at. Now, let's look at the last statement. Speaking on Wednesday, Hans, oh, sorry, I'm doing a Danish thing. Sorry, Hans, let me do it German style. I lived in Denmark for 6 months, so I say Hans Christian Wolters, a spokesperson for the Braunschweig. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to work on my German. Braunschweig. Is that correct? If you're German, tell me that Braunschweig is correct. State prosecution, which is leading the investigation, told the German broadcaster NDR that Bruckner was not helping them in the search. Oh, how dare he! Because A, he probably didn't do it, but B, because even if he did, why should he help them? Because he's obviously not getting a good enough plea deal, even if he did it. He said, this is Wolters, we have indications that we could find evidence there. What precisely that is, I actually don't want to say. From where these clues come from, I also don't want to say. The only thing that I would like to clarify is that this does not come from the accused himself. Wolters is back at his somebody somewhere said something. My God, it's unbelievable. That's to say, we have no confession or similar from him. And it's also, unfortunately, not the case that it's a tip from the accused as to where it would make more sense for us to search. We'd rather just search everywhere in the freaking world because you never know. Rather, there are other clues which have prompted us to carry out this search operation. More than that, I cannot say right now. I'm sorry. Oh my God. A poor excuse for a prosecutor I cannot come up with. And I honestly think if they ever charge Bruckner with this crime, I will support prosecutorial misconduct 100%. And usually I don't go that way because a lot of times I think it's just a defense tactic. I'm on board with that this time, not because I think the McCanns are involved, which I think this evidence supports, but because this guy's the worst prosecutor I've ever heard of. He constantly makes statements that he then backtracks on and he can't come forward with. And all this kind of, I think Wolters wants his day in the sun. I think he is a publicity hound. I think he wants to solve the biggest case of the century for a child abduction. That's who I think he is. So basically, Christian Bruckner did not say, okay, all right, give me a deal. I'm going to tell you where she's buried. She's under the oak tree. I don't know if they have oak trees at the reservoir. She's under a whatever location at the reservoir, because that's a place I used to like to go to. So after I abducted her, I drove straight to the reservoir. I raped and murdered her and put her there. But Wolters says you don't have that kind of information to pinpoint anything. So basically, they're just running around the reservoir digging up crap like they did in Germany. But at least in Germany, they had a house, at least they had Bruckner's absolute locations. Here, they're just digging up a reservoir. And the claim is that, one of the claims is that there was some, quote, he said he liked to go there. Well, I'm pretty sure that in Germany, they have Lidl stores, because Lidl, because they're now in the US. I think that's a German store. I mean, have they dug up all the backyards of Lidl stores? I mean, because he's probably been shopping, I mean, is that the way? I understand if people have been in a certain location, you might want to look there if you believe that they committed a crime. And that might be a chosen spot. But the way they're doing it is just hysterical. And by the way, I will link my thing on Madeleine McCann, the last thing I did on Madeleine McCann as far as the search goes. And one of the things I did point out was that this is a location just west of Praia de Luz. It's called Mont José de Mestre. It's an isolated I found it really quickly as I drove out of Praia de Luz. It's an isolated little area with a bunch of little brush and dirt and some windmills and stuff. And it looks like this. And Jerry's phone pinged on that road outside of there. So I always said, you ought to go up there and dig around. Take some metal detectors, see what you find. But that's never happened. But I always hope one day they'll build some houses up there and they might dig something up. But who knows if they ever will. Now let me go to your comments on that, and then I'm going to go on to Sandra Lean and Luke Mitchell. All right, let's see what we got for comments here. Oh, Linda. Hi, Linda from Big Bear Lake, California. Recovering from vacay. Isn't that the truth sometimes? It is. Michaela, are you're up and awake? welcome, Michaela. Let's see. Emily is here. Let's see what your comments on this are. Michaela says, the police have a dive team. They need to keep busy. Well, they had both the dive team and the things on the shore. Benny is here too. Welcome, Benny. Always love having you here. You know that. Martin says, if you believed this was serious, they're bound to find something on the third day. But of course, if you know Martin, you know that's facetious. Lisa S is here. Welcome. No, Lauren. Was this the first time they have searched that reservoir? No, it was searched privately, and it was more about the McCanns possibly dumping her in the reservoir than it was about Christian Bruckner at the time. So it's been searched once before, and nothing was found. Let's see. Let's see what Michaela has to say. Which way, Bruckner is a scumbag. There's no question Bruckner is a scumbag and needs to be locked away for good. Absolutely. But one has to be very careful of scumbags in that they're very useful fall guys. They are. When you want to close a case, you point at this guy and nobody likes him. I mean, who's going to like Christian Bruckner? Would you leave Christian Bruckner alone with your 4-year-old? No. So do people dislike Christian Bruckner? Absolutely. Do they think he could have abducted Madeleine McCann? Should she have been abducted? Absolutely. If I believed Madeleine McCann had been abducted, Christian Bruckner would fit the bill. And I also wouldn't have believed the dumb story about him taking her all the way back to Germany because he was living in Portugal near Praia de Luz. So if she was abducted by someone, it would be someone in or near Praia de Luz who kidnapped her, took her someplace, raped and murdered her, and she would be dead within 4 hours. And then he would dispose of her body. If this were the facts, if the abduction scenario was supported, Christian Bruckner, I have no problem with him being the guy. But then again, I don't have any problem with any other creepy dude in the area being the guy either. So you still have to prove it. So there's more than one scumbag out there, unfortunately. Oh, Lord. Lauren says, after watching your video on the reservoir search, I thought how shocking it would be if they did find remains, not just in the reservoir, but anywhere. Imagining how the news would be on it. Oh, my God. Here's the interesting thing. The reservoir was searched for Maddie's remains because of, well, the McCanns could have put her there. So if they find remains of Maddie in the reservoir or under the ground, unless they have something linked to the remains that would point to Christian Bruckner or point to the McCanns, they got nothing. All they have is the child was dumped there. That's it. So they would need literally like a laundry bag around Maddie's body with a label that said Christian Bruckner, or a blue sports bag and some other evidence that would say the McCanns. But that's not, unless they have absolute link to Bruckner or the McCanns, it's still going to prove absolute zero. I think this is an unsolvable case unless somebody confesses. That's my opinion on that. Let's see. They have just said they can't jeopardize the investigation. Yeah, that's an old, that they say that all the time. Is this a Dear Pat? No, there's no Dear Pats. I have separate Dear Profiler Pats now. All of you who have requested Dear Profiler Pat, I now have a separate playlist, which is my advice column. And somebody came in and said, I thought you were a profiler, not an advice columnist. All right, whatever. I like to have fun, and so does everybody else. And people think I have good advice. So, hey, so I have my now new playlist, and there's 3 now. There's 3 videos already up. So anybody can ask me a Dear Profiler Pat question. And I'm answering from 2 things: from my experience as a profiler, an understanding of human nature, and also from life experience, because as some people point out, I apparently am old. Okay, which will come into play when I talk about the Sandra Lean stuff. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Yes. Let's see. Benny, Pat, regarding Madeline, it's also a PR stunt to make people connect Bruckner to the disappearance of her so that the public also have that image. It gets the McCanns free of suspicions. Can't argue with that, Benny. It could well be a publicity stunt because they've got nothing but, oh my God, has the media gone crazy? It is gone crazy. And they're reviewing everything from, oh, how many years it's been and why Madeline has been looked for and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the media is nuts on this. And, you know, considering our fake Maddie that came from Poland, that got attention. And so, you know, a German prosecutor like Wolters could go, hey, I can capitalize on this. People are back to thinking about Maddie. Why don't I just go search some location? Now, I just want to point this out. What if they find, I say, if they find Maddie's remains there, we don't know who put them there. We don't, unless Bruckner's name is attached to something that's attached to their bones or whatever they find, if they find anything. And let me point out, this is one reason profilers do not want to speak up about the evidence. And in the Madeline McCann case, almost no profiler will say anything that isn't in agreement with the media, which is the McCanns are 100% innocent and this is an abduction. They won't speak up because A, you'll get stomped on by the media, which I have. You'll get stomped on by legal representation for the McCanns, which I have. You get stomped on by many people in the public, which I have. But number 4, what the heck happens if you're wrong? What happens if they find out that she was abducted by Christian Bruckner? Does that destroy your entire credibility? And in this day and age, it does. Because people don't understand. And I point this out all the time. Any profiler, any investigator who is analyzing evidence cannot be right in the long run because A, they didn't have all the information that would have helped them understand the case better. Evidence that disappeared, evidence that wasn't available, peculiar behaviors, all kinds of things. But also, human beings aren't 100% right. Doctors aren't 100% right. Nobody's 100% right. And I don't expect anybody to be 100% right myself. And I don't attack them for that being not correct. I get concerned when they're deceptive and lying, but and that kind of thing. But if they're wrong once in a while, whatever, you know, you're not perfect. And profiling belongs in the police investigation to help them determine leads, not to be a pronouncement that this is exactly what is true. So I was one of the few people, along with Gonzalo Amaral, that spoke up. And believe me, it wasn't peachy keen. And and people wonder why would you do that? It's because I've always just kind of basically been straight up. But I understand why a lot of people don't do it, because it does not bode well. When you're doing it, you get attacked. And if you're wrong, my God, they better not find Christian Bruckner on that stupid laundry bag encasing her body. Oh, that's going to do me in. Oh, dang. Oh, oh Lord. All right. So they'll never find her in that vast area. They should have. Oh, my God. Well, the vast area problem. That's that's a great point, Aunt Dini. Most of the time, bodies are found by dog walkers, hikers, In the case of Chandra Levy in Rock Creek Park, it was a guy looking for turtles. It's found accidentally because it is so vast. When you could search after search after search, if there's a ravine and the body's in it, you just miss it. So usually it is by accident. And I keep hoping by accident, maybe Maddie's body will be found. This hasn't happened yet. But that's a good point. Marianne, Herr Wolfers should be really called Anderson like the other Hans Christian, both storytellers. I think that's what does it to me. Because, Hans Christian Andersen, he's the writer of all the wonderful fairy tales, very very frightening fairy tales, actually, but I do love them. And of course, he's Danish, he's Hans Christian Andersen. But I think Wolters he's got his own fairy tale going there. I think that's true. Just wondering what your thoughts are, whether a friend of the parents were involved. Absolutely not. Well, I take that back. Jane Tanner, if you read my book or whatever, Jane Tanner's version of sighting Tanner Man on a dead, empty, quiet street when Jerry was talking to Jez, and she walks by them, but they don't see her, and they don't see this Tanner Man guy taking their child away. Only she does. Jane Tanner, something wrong with that whole picture, because I think that was a lie. I think Smith Man is the correct guy, and that's the person that, if you look, I'll put up below the 5 reasons, the 5 clues to why I believe the McCanns are involved. And the biggest one is that the McCanns did not want to recognize Smith Man as a person who could be taking their child away, even though a man was seen taking a child toward the beach by a whole entire family. But they played that down and preferred the Jane Tanner version. So I think Jane Tanner knows more. I think somebody knows more, but some of the questions are, did somebody help remove Maddie or bury her someplace? And my answer to that is this. If, and I say if, the McCanns were involved, I believe Jerry would have conducted that particular necessary rite by himself, completely by himself, to control everything and to not have to put his wife through that. I think he would do it by himself so that only he would know. That would be my answer on that. Remains don't show how it happened, maybe only if evidence was preserved. And we're talking about, was it 2007? We're talking, that's a lot of years. So 16 now. 16? I'm sorry about my math is bad. That's a long time. And in the water or even in the land, it's the chances of anything being useful is pretty limited at this point. All right. So yeah, nothing. All right. Let me go on to Sandra Lean, because this is quite amusing. Sandra Lean. So anyway, if anybody knows, I did 2 videos. One was a video on did I believe that Luke Mitchell was innocent of the murder of Jody Mitchell. He's been in prison many, many years, and there's a whole Free Luke Mitchell brigade out there. Jody Jones was murdered. She was a teenager. She was 14. She was murdered in Scotland. And Luke Mitchell was her boyfriend, and he was supposed to be meeting her that day. And the prosecution presented a case that Luke Mitchell met her and then killed her and then covered it up, and he was convicted. All right. But there's a huge group out there wanting to free Luke Mitchell. And the leader of that group at this point in time is the woman's name here is Dr. Sandra Lean. She wrote this book, Innocence Betrayed. She worked 15 years on this case, and she is totally of the belief that Luke Mitchell is innocent. And after I did my first video, I got a lot of attacks from that side that said, you didn't even bother to read her book. You just watched those 2 documentaries and read some crap online. There's a group, a guy who runs a group called, well, I think it's just him, Innocence Fraud. You listen to him, and Roberta Glass had him on, and they talked together, and they said, oh, you just copied Roberta Glass, and he said, which was ridiculous because I never even watched that till after I did the video. And interesting enough, the Innocence Fraud guy went after me on Twitter viciously, saying I had I had fallen, to the attacks on me, and that I wasn't coming clean about Sandra Lean, and he did all these kind of outrageous attacks on me. And I'm like, kind of on your side, so what the heck? It's like, what are you talking about? He got so vicious I had to actually block him. So I want to point out this very, very clearly. Sometimes you have a side that says he's innocent and a side that says he's guilty, and both sides are not exactly handling things well. A lot of times they both talk garble. They both don't present proper evidence because they're both so emotional that they fail to do it on both sides. So, even if someone, same thing happened with Madeleine McCann, by the way. I believe that Madeleine McCann died on the night that while the parents were at, I believe the evidence supports, while the parents were at the Tapas restaurant, Madeleine died. That is what I believe the evidence most likely supports that night. And yet there's a whole bunch of people out there who think that the McCanns and all their friends 3 days before did something to Madeleine and she died, and they're carrying around a fake Madeleine, and there's a fake this and a fake that, and there's a fake picture. And I said, that's just nonsense. And I got massively attacked for that. And people who used to think I was a really great person suddenly said I was a horrible human being. And I was complete failure as a profiler. These are people that basically believed that Madeleine McCann was not abducted, yet they suddenly turned on me. And this is what happened with innocence fraud. They suddenly turned on me, being very nasty. And I'm like, what the heck? Did you watch the whole video? Yeah. So anyway, they're over there doing their crazy stuff. Sandra Lean's over here. So Sandra Lean watched the video, and she did her own video. Wrong place. Let me go down. Okay. Here is Sandra Lean. She has Pat Brown's analysis by Dr. Sandra Lean. And here's a little comment below. I'm glad to see you have recorded a response to Pat's video. She clearly doesn't know enough about the case and doesn't have any knowledge of the Scottish justice system. Epic fail, Pat Brown. All right. Now, the first thing that's kind of amusing is when I looked at all the comments, all of them were ad hominem attacks. They were just attacks on me. I was called, again, like I've often been called, a fraud. I've never worked with the police. I only have a liberal arts degree. None of these things are true. I have a master's degree. I did work with the police, but there's all kinds of attacks. This one was my favorite. You're one old trout. I get that a lot because of my age. I'm called an old crone. I'm called an old trout. I'm called an old something or other, because it's a great way to attack somebody. And one thing I didn't do when I was doing the thing on Dr. Lean was I never said that I had a problem with her background. I said I personally didn't think of her as a criminologist. I said she had a PhD in philosophy, studying defense cases of defense, and that she had a legal background. She did object to what I said about her, but I wasn't downing her for that. I never did. And I'm going to say one thing about Sandra Lean's discussion here. So she puts up my video in different pieces. And by the way, that's not copyright infringement. She's properly using the concept of when you use pieces of somebody's video, you have to have commentary on it, not just, oh, that's cool, ha ha ha, that's great. Like certain people just stealing your crap to get people to watch the videos. She actually had a purpose, and so I don't have any problem with what she said as far as her using my video. And I want to comment on this. She used what I call it's a debate methodology. She is academic in that sense. She used a proper debate, in my opinion. She might have been condescending toward me. She may have been insulting, but she smiled through the whole thing. I got to credit her. She knows how to smile. Like she was like to the entire video. I actually didn't watch a lot of the video. I just went by it. I couldn't listen to a lot of the stuff, but I could see that she was using a debate format, which I'm okay with. People can watch my video, see what I have to say, then they can watch her video and see what she has to say. That's a good debate formula. I approve of that because there's no reason why she shouldn't be able to debate what I said. And she didn't do things like put cartoons of me and make me go, bah! Or something, which a lot of people do. They try to make, they do all kinds of nasty things to make you look, just to mock you, make you look bad. She just gave her words in a very calm way. I'm okay with that. So she gave her debate return. Fine. Now, do I think she was her response to me had any worth? And I'm going to say I have the same problem with her response as I did with the book. Now, one of the problems I had with her book, and I'm going to tell you one example of this. So here's her book, and one of the problems I have complained about with her book is that it goes on and on without there's no footnotes, there's no references. It's just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of information that I just simply cannot verify. And the first one she objected to is the one I'm going to point out, because that was sort of where once this went by, I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to spend my time watching the rest of this. And this was in the beginning of her book. It was called The Agreed Facts. Now, she says the simplest place to begin with is the known and agreed facts at the time. And I objected to this because I said, these are not agreed upon facts. For example, she says in the book, the 434 text from Julia's phone, that's the mother of the victim, to Luke, that's the convicted, because the girl that was murdered, her phone was broken, so she was using her mom's phone, asked, did he want to meet up with Jody later that evening? Luke texted back saying he would be out after tea and suggested Jody come down from her home in East Houses to meet him near his home in New Battle. This was supposed to be an agreed upon fact. Now, I said right away, well, the texts were deleted on both ends. I don't know how they got deleted. I don't know why they were deleted. I cannot get the information, but they were deleted. And no, she didn't give me any information in the book as to why they were deleted. They just were. So we only have Luke's word that she said, you want to meet up later. And then he said that to meet him after he had tea, which would be 5:30 to 6 p.m. Now, it was more common that they would meet at 6 p.m., mind you. But since they hadn't seen each while she'd been on restriction, that she could then go see him earlier that day because they had been in restriction. So she was let off of restriction and could then get there earlier. Now, I complained that if I'm going to believe the rest of your book, you cannot say something's an agreed upon fact that is not an agreed upon fact, because no one knows what Judy typed because she's dead, and no one knows what Luke said because it's just what he's claiming he said or what he typed. So the only place this information comes from is Luke himself. Now, what happened was Sandra Lean said in her response to me is, those were agreed upon facts, Pat. If you understood the Scottish system, you would know these were agreed upon facts. Now, mind you, in this book, there is no footnote as to where that came from, nor there is any box showing the actual. Now, supposedly she has everything that was in the trial and everything that was in defense. Where is any information that this is an agreed upon fact by the court? I see nothing. All right. So where I got my information was from right here. Let me show you. This is, oh, look what this is. This is an appeal by Luke Mitchell in the Scottish Courts and Tribunal. It's the appeal. I'm going to read you two things from the appeal. Okay. And this is why I say, what I see Sandra Lean do is ignore what I'm not actually provide the information, and then do a whole lot of talking about this and that, almost like a word salad type thing, where you can't even figure out exactly what she's trying to say, but she's kind of saying you're wrong, and then blah, blah, blah. She accused me of insulting, accusing Jody's mother of lying, because Jody's mother supposedly said something, and I'm accusing her of lying. But she's accused Jody's mother of lying, and she accused everybody of lying or being mistaken. And then she says, well, how dare you accusing Luke and his mother of lying? That's what Luke said. Well, if there's no proof, there's no proof. I'm not saying it couldn't be true. I'm just saying there's no proof of it. So let me read you from the court what we have here. All right, hold on a second. Let me find it here. All right. All right. This is, hold on a second, make sure I got this in the right order here. All right. From the prosecution. This is from the appeal. This is called Events Prior to the Murder. The deceased's freedom to go out of an evening was restricted by her mother in the weeks prior to her death, but she was released from that restriction on the afternoon of the murder. She arrived home at 16:05 hours, which is 4:05. At 16:35, which is 4:35, she used her mother's mobile phone, because hers was broken, to send a text message to the appellant. How does that say? Appellant. To Luke. He responded at 16:36. A further text was sent by the deceased to him at 16:38. The terms of these text messages were not preserved. The deceased left her house at about 16:50. That's 4:50, informing her mother that she was going to meet Luke Mitchell and would be mucking about up here. That means on her end of the path. Now, Luke Mitchell claims that she wasn't going to meet him there, and she wasn't going to meet him right away. She was going to wait until he finished tea, and then they were going to meet at his end of the path, something she wasn't even supposed to do, walking down the 15 minutes down the path by herself in a secluded area. He was supposed to go meet her, or somebody would walk her down. Luke claims that she was going to meet him at her end, at his end, not her end. But right here in the prosecution, it says that she stated, she informed her mother she was going to meet I can't say it, so meet Luke right away and muck around up there. Okay, so there is no agreed upon anything here by the prosecution that they were going to meet later at Luke's end. There's no agreed upon anything here. It's nonsense. It's right here in the appeal. There's nothing agreed upon. The prosecution still says she was going to meet him right away. She said goodbye to her mother, walked out the door, and was supposed to meet him right away. So I don't know, Sandra Lean, where you're getting that crap from. And if you're going to put that out there and it's true, well, then I want to see some proof of it. Don't just tell me I don't understand the system. I don't see a shred of proof. And in the appeal, it's not there. Now let's look at Luke's side of it, because, hey, now we look at the defense side, because maybe the prosecution is just full of crap, although they're supposed to have agreed upon that these texts were actually that they were going to meet later. Here, the last text, this is from the defense, mind you. The last text was sent about 1640. Luke, his position was, Luke Mitchell, was that thereafter he had listened to music. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Let me go back. I missed something. Defense case. It says right here, defense case. Luke Mitchell did not give evidence. Okay, so he didn't even speak in court. He wasn't willing to take the stand. His position was outlined in a number of statements he gave to police officers. All right. Then it says here, he saw the deceased at lunchtime on the day of the murder. She had taken the school bus home after school and he had walked. He had not seen her alive after that point. He had returned home around 1600 or 1605, which is about 4 o'clock. And the deceased texted him at 1620, that's 4:20, asking if he was coming out. Then asking if he was coming out. If she was asking if he was coming out, she meant right away. She didn't say, are you coming out later? Just, are you coming out? This is from the defense. He had replied that he would do so later on. Well, wait a minute. I thought it was clear that she asked him if they're going to meet later on. No, he said he was going to meet later on. That's the defense's claim. Or as he had to make dinner. Arrangements were made for the deceased to come down to the new battle area, but no time was arranged for the meeting. At no point do they say that Jody's mother knew otherwise, that Jody's mother had read the text and knew that they were meeting later. Jody's mother testified that her daughter was leaving then to meet Luke right away. So I don't know where this claim is from Dr. Lean, that the prosecution agreed that they were going to meet later. It's not there. It's not in the appeals. It's not in appeals for the prosecution. And even the appeals from the defense don't claim that Jody's mother also knew they were meeting later. And do you know why this is? That's so important for Dr. Lean to say they were meeting later. because this is the whole crux. This is the entire thing that supports her argument that he did not kill her, because he had to have an alibi. The alibi had to be that he was making dinner, staying home, having tea. He wasn't home. He was going to meet her later, and by the time he would go to meet her, she was already dead. Sandra Lean cannot have Luke leave the house to go meet Jody at the other end of the path. So what Sandra Lean doesn't in this book, which I find, talk about saying everybody is a liar and or wrong. She does that constantly during this book. She claims that Jody's mother lied. Jody's I forgot if he was a husband or he was just a significant other in the house. He lied. They were all wrong about when Jody actually left the house. Then the witness that saw what she believed was two kids standing there about the time Luke should meet. Well, she had to be wrong too, either lying or wrong. And the fact that Luke called the speaking clock, which he had no reason to do from home, which would make more sense that he was walking up there and called it. If he hadn't seen her yet, he'd call and say, "Hey, are you about here?" I mean, find out the time to see if she's about to show up. She can't address that because Luke never explained why he called the speaking clock at all. And the only real good reason was he was out waiting for Jody, or just wanted to check the time to make sure he was meeting her on time. So her whole thing has to depend on Jody not leaving the house to meet him at the East End. So she has to crush that in order to make it impossible for him to have committed the crime. And that's what her whole book is about. It's a whole book about how we can just basically say he didn't leave the house, that he had an alibi, which his own brother blew in court. So sorry, Sandra Lean, but I don't see any evidence from the appeals that there was any agreed upon facts that the content of those disappeared texts had Jody saying she would meet him later and that Luke saying they would meet later. There's no agreed upon anything there. And it's just a plain, in my opinion, an outright lie. And unless you can prove some evidence that this is true, then you're being deceptive. Absolutely 100% deceptive. And I don't see any proof. It wasn't in your book. And I looked for it. I mean, I'm perfectly happy if you could prove it, if you could say the prosecution said that that's exactly what happened, but that's not what's in the book. And it's not what's in the appeals. So what the heck is it? This agreed upon fact that, think about this. If the prosecution agreed that Jody actually was to meet Luke later, and Luke really did tell her to meet him later, that he was going to meet her after dinner, after tea, why the heck would they even charged him? Because he wouldn't have left the house to meet Jody. They wouldn't have even charged him. They would have gone, well, we knew that she wasn't going to meet him till later, so something else must have happened to her. So it's nonsensical that the prosecution would agree to that fact. It's not agreed upon fact. It's nonsense. I found her, as I started listening to her on the video, I was like, yeah, it's just like the book. It's a whole bunch of stuff thrown about. And the people who are obsessed with his innocence, are very emotional like her about his innocence, will pretty much go with anything that's out there. That is not the way you prove something. So if Sandra Lean had written a book that I don't care whether he's innocent or guilty personally. First of all, I'm from the US. I don't have any emotions involved in this crime whatsoever. Somebody else killed Jody, fine. If somebody else did it, Luke Mitchell should be free. I don't have an issue with this. But I read your book, and it was nonsense. And I watched the 2 videos, and they were nonsense. I haven't seen one shred of proof of what you're claiming. And you had if you spent 15 years and you wrote an entire book, you had an opportunity to put specific things in there that could be followed, that were proof, not just a whole bunch of allegations. And this person could have said this, and this person could have done that. No. If you're going to say that it was agreed upon fact, where is your evidence? Why don't you have the supporting footnote right down there? I don't see it, and I don't see it in the appeal. So I think it's absolute garbage. Sorry. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. So I'll get your comments on that. Just crazy. Crazy. And I don't care if Luke Mitchell's innocent. I don't mind somebody proving it. It's okay with me. If he was an innocent kid, he's an innocent kid. Prove it. But he was found guilty in a court of law. So No, again, no. I disapprove of this entirely. No, and I've had people actually say this. People come in and then I have a troll that comes in and starts attacking me, and then people start attacking them. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. It actually comes out to be worse than if you just leave it alone. Okay, I don't need people protecting me or saying, "Oh, Pat's right," blah blah blah. Don't be so mean to Pat. I will block what I can, and what I can't, just let it go. I mean, it's not worth it. And please do not go over to Sandra Lean's site and start trying to back me up there. It's not necessary. Let her have her site. Let her have her people say what they want to say. People can go to both sites. They can listen to the videos, and they can make up their own minds. We don't need to have groups of people attacking all over the place. Yeah. Let's see. Lauren says, are there parts of the evidence that you mentioned in the case that they contest? Oh, most of it, yes. The whole book is about contesting the evidence that was presented in court. Yes, but the problem is the way they protest it is a whole bunch of word garble, in my opinion, and pointing fingers at everybody and saying this person said this and this person said that and this couldn't have happened and this person's wrong. I don't have evidence. It's just accusations, and yeah. Sandra's, I think you're talking about Luke Mitchell. Sandra's book, Manifesto, sounds like she's borderline obsessed with. I think you meant Luke Mitchell. Yes. She is big into the innocence stuff. She goes gung-ho on innocence, what she believes people are innocent. She's been wrong before. And again, anybody can be wrong once or twice. And I don't care if she was wrong before. What I care is, at this point, she's now come out with this book, and I don't find her stuff valid. That's my problem. I don't care if she messed up once before, so be it. I mean, we all do. But this one, I just and yeah, that's my problem. A lot of red flags in the argument style. If she had presented a book with logical stuff in it, with proper supports, I might have said, hey, it was an unsafe conviction. There's a lot of claims that the police were really crappy in their interview methodology. There's a lot of claims, too, that I can't say are true. But if the police did things improperly, it might be an unsafe conviction. But again, an unsafe conviction does not mean he's innocent. It just means it was unsafe because of technicalities and police misconduct or prosecutorial misconduct. Now, I'm going to talk about that a little later in the show with four other cases, maybe four. I'm making up a number. Should we let police misconduct and prosecutorial misconduct be ignored? No, it's a terrible thing. And sometimes we'll unfortunately have to let an innocent person go for that reason. But that's a whole different reason than innocence. Well, Ali says, I watched her response and she seemed to twist things you said. She did. And she twisted a lot of things people said in the book too, which is, and with the evidence, this is why I have trouble with it, let's see. Seems to me like the author of the book is a fan of Luke and looking to gain favor with him. I think she hooked up with Luke's mom and liked her and thought she believed her son was innocent. And I think she had an emotional attachment there. And as she was studying for a PhD, she made fighting for against false convictions. She started fighting that whole thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody's got to do it, okay? But I think there is a level of where I think loses objectivity in her connections and in her fight. I do believe that. So she worked very hard at this. I can't say she didn't, but I think the book did not do it for me. And the fact that, say, she made accusations and pointed fingers and couldn't back up what she was saying is problematic. And the same thing happened when the video that she made rebutting what I said. She's doing the same thing there. So I was like, yeah, okay. If you're not going to come up with proof, then don't go there. That should be your job. Yeah. So anyway, let me go on to something else here. But craziness. All right. Speaking of jury systems and this kind of thing, I've kind of been on a Murder City kick. They only had 2 seasons. They didn't do well. It's Luke. It is Amanda Donahue. I think her name is Donahue. I wrote that wrong, I think. And Chris Marshall, who comes from who now is doing Death in Paradise and also After Paradise. So I like him. I do. I like Chris Marshall, and so I enjoyed the show. It was kind of ridiculously outrageous in their crimes, and not as good, I think, as Death in Paradise or even After Paradise. But I'm kind of I have a thing for those kind of shows. So anyway, what I thought was interesting is they had this story. It was ludicrous that this girl was abducted. This man's wife was abducted. She was kept for 3 days. She was tortured. She was raped. She was humiliated, and the guy took video and photo. I don't know video, but photos of all of this, and it was just gruesome. The jury found him guilty, but because of a police error, the case was basically dumped. It was found an unsafe conviction. So he was guilty as hell, but he got off because of a police error. So the story in this case goes is that they were 12 angry people, like the 12 Angry Men movie, and they decided to execute him because he should have been executed. And so they did. They tied him to a tree, and all 12 showed up with guns, and they were taught how to shoot him. And they all shot, and only one had a live round, and the guy gets killed. And but what's interesting to me was one of the things they had said was why they did this, which I think is ludicrous. You're going to get a whole jury to cooperate. This kind of nonsense. It's not going to happen. But their thing was, we saw the photos. They were emblazoned in our brains and in our heart, and we had to look at what he did to this girl. And we couldn't live with the fact that he walked on some teeny technicality. It made us so ill, and we could not handle that. And the fact that he was a serial killer then, right? And he'd go out and kill more people. We decided we had to do right. We had to enact justice and make sure he was no longer available to kill any more innocent women and put them through that. We couldn't live with it. It's fiction, okay? But I understand this again. When you have a jury in there and they're not professional jurors, they're civilian jurors, they have to deal with the emotional, horrific emotional effects that it has for them, because this is not something they normally deal with. And even if they watch television or they watch true crime shows, it's real different when you're confronted with the actual thing yourself in reality, right in front of you. It really does damage to people. So there are jurors out there who, have to put up with this. And I feel very sorry for civilian jurors. When I say it's 12 people off a bus stop, I say that because it's about their training, that they don't have proper training to a lot of times analyze cases and understand what's being presented forensically or what the defense is trying to snow them. And I think they're doing their best, but emotions can take over, misunderstanding. Somebody's just not that bright. You can have one person to screw it all up in the U.S. because it's not a majority. It has to be all of them. It's ridiculous. And I feel sorry for the jury. Because it's not their fault. They got picked off the bus stop. They have to deal with what they have to deal with. They do their best, and their best just might be whatever it is. But emotionally, I feel bad for them. So there's a bunch of cases just came out that people have asked me about, which are about innocence. Are the guys trying to get the guys out of prison? Now, all of these, mind you, interesting enough, have been found guilty by juries. Now, do I think these jurors were wrong in these cases? Well, I wasn't in the jury box. I didn't see the whole trial, so I can't actually say whether they were guilty or innocent. But what's fascinating is people support civilian juries 100%. People call me like, how can you think that a civilian jury isn't the right thing? We shouldn't have professional jurors. They can be crooked. They can control things because of the government, and they can be bought and they can be political. We support 100% civilian juries. However, when it comes to getting people out of prison, suddenly those jurors are kicked to the curb, and all of a sudden it's all about what some one person says to get that person out. What? How? What? How is suddenly the jury decision didn't matter anymore? So let's look at a couple of them. It's unbelievable. It really is. Right now we have Adnan Syed is back in the news again in Maryland. Adnan Syed, who was convicted of murdering Hae-Min Lee many years ago, and our what I consider our pretty crooked Maryland state's Baltimore state's attorney, Mosby. She had a political. She was being indicted for other stuff. So I think this was a political move on her part to get Adnan Syed out after the podcast came out, serial podcast, and everybody started thinking he was innocent of killing her. But he was found guilty by a jury. Now, mind you, what's happened now is he's back in the news because apparently I'll read you what happened. So he was going to be let out of prison and all that stuff. Hold on a second. I just clicked the wrong thing here. Adnan Syed, you pull up. Okay. So it says here, what had happened was, let me read you what happened. Adnan Syed is asking the Supreme Court of Maryland to overrule a lower court's decision to bring back his convictions in the 1999 murder case examined in the hit podcast Serial. So they decided to reinstate his conviction because the defense, they did something crooked in the sense that they wouldn't let the family, the brother of the victim, come and testify in time. They didn't give him the information, so he couldn't get there. So they went ahead without him. And they found that the Baltimore prosecutors and a city circuit court judge violated the rights of Lee's brother, Young Lee, by neglecting to give him enough notice to be able to attend the hearing that set Syed free. So mind you, some people, which is Marilyn Mosby, who was the Baltimore state's attorney at the time, who decided she was going to set Syed free, Adnan Syed free because, hey, it benefited her politically. One person. Then she got a couple, I guess, somebody over the prosecutor's office, the new prosecutor's office, to say, yeah, let's go with that. Now, one of the accusations I've heard from people is that almost all the Innocence Project stuff is done based on DNA evidence, that they're freeing people. First of all, that's nonsense. That's not true. A good portion has nothing to do with DNA. It has to do with technicalities. And this is what happened with Adnan Syed. The technicality was some police person or something didn't let the defense know about, they had scribbled something down about a possible suspect and didn't let the defense know. That was a technicality. There's no DNA in this case that they found that proved he didn't do it. So that's nonsense. It was a technicality, police misconduct, theoretically, or prosecutorial misconduct. So, and it was just a couple people. Mind you, the jury didn't matter anymore. See, chuck out that civilian jury. Now we're just going to listen to Mosby, because she's a Baltimore state's attorney, and she's got her political thing going. But all of a sudden, everybody wants to think that Adnan Syed is innocent, who's all, we love Adnan, suddenly wants one person to make a decision and not the jury. See how that works? So anyway, then they reinstated it because they said there was a failure to do the proper thing again. So they're not allowing the charges to be dropped. And now in this new brief, Syed's lawyers doubled down on arguments that were raised in April about the appeal, and they're saying, this is all wrong, and he should be freed. Okay, that's one. Let's go to this guy. This guy, this is all over the news. This guy is Richard. Hold on a second. Let me pull this up. Okay, his name is Richard. Sorry, I'm having a freezing frame problem here. Okay, where are you, buddy? Okay, here we go. All right. His name is Richard Glossip. All right, from Oklahoma. The Supreme Court blocks Richard Glossip's execution in Oklahoma. All right. So this is this guy. All right. Now, here's what that's all about. The Supreme Court on Friday blocked Oklahoma from executing death row inmate Richard Glossip for his role in a 1997 murder for hire after the state's attorney general agreed Glossip's life should be spared. So one guy, state's attorney general, decided, let's spare his life. One guy, not the jury. The jury decided he should get the death penalty. One state's attorney says, let's not do that. Why is that? While it is rare for the conservative-dominated court to put executions on hold, it is even more unusual for a prosecutor to side with the inmate, and that is true. Glossip had been scheduled to put to death on May 18th, so they subsequently, let's see, and they said the word here is N-E-W, new. The new Oklahoma Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, said that Glossip did not receive a fair trial. So it's a new one, just like this is what Mosby did too. You get somebody new in there and they say, oh, he didn't get a fair trial. Now, was it about DNA? No, it was not. I'm going to tell you what it was about. All right. So the Oklahoma Appeals Court subsequently upheld his conviction, and the state's Pardon and Parole Board deadlocked on a vote to grant him clemency. All right. So now, let's see what happened further here. Glossip's attorney said there's nothing more harrowing than the thought of executing a man who the state now admits has never received a fair trial. Okay, why didn't he receive a fair trial, we ask. All right, Drummond, that's the now prosecutor, says Glossip's trial was unfair and unreliable, so unsafe in the words of the UK. He said, I will continue to work to ensure justice prevails in this important case. Drummond also has said he does not believe, get this one though, Drummond says that he does not believe Glossip is innocent of the murder for hire killing of Glossip's former boss. Okay, so he doesn't think the guy's innocent. So that to me is fascinating right there. So again, the Innocence Project always says these people are innocent, not that they're being let out on a technicality or that we have to hold the feet to the fire of the state because we can't have the state just run over people. That's a different matter. If you want to say, hey, look, the guy's probably guilty as hell, but we can't, we can't have the police and prosecution running things this way. But that's not what he's saying. He's not saying the guy's innocent, he's saying here the guy's not innocent, which I think is great that he's actually saying this. So most time they don't say that. So he says he does not believe he's innocent of the murder for hire killing. Another man, Justin Sneed, admitted robbing and killing Van Treese, that's the guy's boss, after Glossip promised to pay him $10,000. Sneed received a life sentence in exchange for his testimony and was a key witness against Glossip. So they said that now the former Oklahoma County District Attorney, David Prater, has long said he believes Glossip persuaded Sneed to kill Van Treese. He said that while Sneed's testimony was most compelling, there was plenty of evidence to corroborate it. So now this is where the Innocence Project, I find, and their whole media team lies to the public. They always say the guy's innocent, or not always, but many times say the guy's innocent, and that because this guy didn't do anything wrong. And they ignore all the corroborating evidence that supported that he did wrong. So even if the DNA evidence didn't match the guy, for example, it doesn't mean that he didn't do it. Let's say a woman goes on a date and she has sex with some guy she picked up in a bar. Then she goes home and she is murdered. And the guy is seen running from her house with a bloody knife in his hand, screaming, the bitch is dead. And they immediately, the police pick him up. And he basically says he did it, blah, 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 blah. But then 20 years later, they find DNA that doesn't match him in the victim. And they say, see, he didn't do it. No. He may not have left that semen, but he did do the crime. So this is the kind of thing, this is the game that's played. And the media, which is controlled good portion by that Innocence Project and those people pushing for that, there'll be 30 pages of the guy's innocent, the guy's innocent, the guy's innocent. And you have to work so hard to get to page 31 or 32 and appeal someplace that you can find out exactly what the evidence was, because they hide that as well as they can. So anyway, when the police came to talk to Glossip about Van Treese's whereabouts, he directed him away from the room he knew where Van Treese was in. At any point, Glossip had the opportunity to tell the police that Sneed did this. He never did that. He even helped Sneed clean everything up. And also, they found that both Sneed and Glossip both had a large amount of cash that Prater said they stole from Van Treese's car, which apparently I think Glossip was the only one who knew it was there. And on top of that, the boss, one of the reason he came up there was because he believed that Glossip was stealing from him, that all the receipts weren't correct, and he'd been basically defrauding the boss for a really long time, and stealing money from him and committing fraud. So there was a huge amount of evidence actually that said this guy was involved, but now they want to let him out because now why do they want to let him out? And let me read you the reason for why he should get out. Okay, these are the questionable circumstances. Okay, let me find it because I think this is one of the craziest things I've ever read. Oh, come on, no, don't disappear. Oh, here we go. All right. New evidence recently released by my office shows that the prosecution's main witness against Mr. Glossip was not entirely truthful in his testimony. And you think it's a testimony about Glossip, right? That's not what it is. This witness, Justin Sneed, had ample motive to testify against Glossip. He confessed to murdering Barry Van Treese and was able to avoid the death penalty by himself by testifying that Glossip paid for the murder. Okay. That's true. He did that, and he did get out of the death penalty. Now, again, alone, I don't buy this kind of crap. Anybody can say anybody else did it, right, or helped to get out of something. But there is corroborating evidence that this is true. That's a corroborating evidence that I lean on. But here is what they're saying. Now, listen to this. So that's tossing out that he got a deal. But that's not why they say it's an unsafe conviction. This is it. However, Mr. Sneed made materially false statements under oath when he said that he had not been treated by a psychiatrist and did not know why he had been prescribed lithium. The jury was not informed that he had been diagnosed as bipolar by the Oklahoma County Jail psychiatrist and prescribed lithium to treat this disorder. Instead, based on the testimony in the record, the jury might have been left with a false impression that Mr. Sneed was mistakenly prescribed lithium because he asked for Sudafed, and no medical doctor was involved in that decision. So basically what they're saying is because the jury wasn't informed that somebody diagnosed him as being bipolar and was supposed to give him certain drugs, that he now should get out of prison. That the other guy should get out of prison because that testimony was false but this literally has nothing to do with the crime. It may have been false testimony, but so what? I mean, that's what your conclusion is of why this was an unsafe conviction, because he didn't admit he was bipolar? What? It is widely understood that the known effects of bipolar disorder combined with illicit drug use, methamphetamine, on memory recall goes directly to witness credibility. So they're claiming that because the jury didn't know that he did meth and was bipolar, that they didn't realize that could affect his honesty in court. Again, this has nothing to do with the guy that they're trying to get out, Glossip, of being innocent of the crime. It has to do with this claim that the guy who said he did it, ignoring all the corroborating evidence, that he didn't tell the truth about his bipolar diagnosis. That was it. Good Lord. Oh my goodness. Let me check some of your comments. It's craziness. It's craziness. Oh my God. In Oklahoma, was a decision just to overturn the death penalty, or did they vacate his conviction? They're trying to vacate it. Yeah, not just the death penalty. I think they're trying to get him out completely. Yeah, that's concerning to me. This is also true. Lack of DNA doesn't prove innocence. This is correct. That is not true. Yeah. She said lack of DNA. Yeah, she did. Back in the Adnan Syed case, they said that because his DNA wasn't on a shoe or something, it wasn't him. So, yeah, that's absolutely nothing. And one more thing, let me talk about the Menendez brothers. There they are. They're the ones. Remember, they killed their mommy and daddy. And at the time, they were the sorry, I can't pronounce things today. Menendez brothers. Sorry. In 1989, when the Menendez brothers killed their parents, which they did, shot them repeatedly with guns, shotguns. Lyle was 21 years old while Eric was 18. They were adults. After the murders, they began to spend money. I think it was like $700,000 right away. Started to spend money lavishly, adding to suspicions they were somehow involved in the murder of their parents. So when they murdered their parents, they claimed that some people came in from someplace else and did it. They did not confess. And then they went and spent $700,000. They were two adults. Now it is claimed that there's new proof that when they finally got arrested and were in court, the claim was that the daddy had molested the kids, and mommy had let it go by. And at this age, mind you, one of them was away at college and the other one was 18. Both were adults. They didn't have to live with mommy and daddy. They could go away. But supposedly the claim is they came to confront dad about this, and dad scared them, and they thought dad was going to kill them. So they killed their parents first before dad could kill them. It was really quite ludicrous bunch of crap. But now, let's see, how many years later is it now? Now they're going for another to be released. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that they couldn't have been molested, but I'm just saying that these were adults who did not have to live at home. Because a wrong was done to you doesn't give you the right to go and murder people. Okay? Because if that's true, hey, I don't see why any raped woman can't just go and blow away the guy that raped her. If that's what you're going with, that, I'm sorry, you were adults. It wasn't like you're a little kid in the house and, or if you were in the process of being raped, you have the right to defend yourself. This is not what's happening. This is a claim, and it's a very vague claim too, about exactly what dad supposedly did to the children, to them, whether he touched them or it's very vague. But what they're saying now, let's see. Okay, I got to find the new okay, here we go. New evidence. It's always new evidence coming out 20, 30 years later. The new evidence, let's see what it is. Trying to overturn the murder convictions. The brothers' first trial ended with jurors unable to reach verdicts, deadlocking between first-degree murder and lesser charges of manslaughter. Second trial lacked much of the information centered on allegations of sexual abuse by Jose Menendez, ended with both brothers being convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy. Well, they did commit first-degree murder and they did commit conspiracy, regardless of what their claim was for why they did it. Because unless they were, at that moment in time, being physically attacked and it was a defense, they're guilty regardless. I don't care what your excuse is. I don't care if you had shabby parents. Illegally, you are not allowed to kill people unless it's in self-defense. And to claim that you thought at some point they might kill you was not believed, shall we say. But in recent court papers, attorneys for the brothers point to two new pieces of evidence. Now, wait a minute. How many years away? Okay, this is, so this was in 89, trying to get, yeah. Okay. I'd have to look back, but anyway, this is the new information. Two new pieces of evidence they contend corroborate the brothers' allegation of long-term sexual abuse. A letter written by Eric Menendez to one of his cousins in early 1989, 8 months before the 1989 killings. So he was either 18 or 7. Wait a minute, which one's the older one? Hold on. Which one's the older one? Okay, Eric was, okay, so from Eric, who could have been 17 at the time or 18, he supposedly wrote this letter to one of his cousins and said, what did he say in this letter? In the letter, he said, I've been trying to avoid dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. Now, mind you, they say, in part, that's what he wrote. I'm not hearing he was sexually assaulted. I'm hearing that he's got a problem. Something's happening with his dad. What is it? His dad's coming in and yelling at him? His dad's coming in and accusing him of things? It doesn't really say what happened. It doesn't say whether he's being touched, whether he's being raped. It doesn't say that, at least not in this article. So that's one thing. Then there's another piece of evidence, supposedly. Now, oh, good Lord, he's got Mark Garagos, my least favorite attorney. Anyway, now, to bolster the contention, attorneys also cited allegations that surfaced last month in a Peacock documentary series in which Roy Rosello, a former member of the boy band Menudo, alleged that Jose Menendez drugged and sexually assaulted him when he was about 14 years old during a visit to the Menendez home in 1983 or 1984. It's a Peacock documentary, which right there makes me suspicious. Okay, so he makes some kind of claim. So we have a claim that he was this thing supposedly happened, and maybe he's a detention seeker. Maybe he wants to get the Menendez brothers out. And then we have this one little letter, which isn't very clear, of something that supposedly happened and was unpleasing to the child, or who is now 17 or 18. But these brothers conspired to go in and kill their parents and spend $700,000 of their money. But now we're supposed to feel sorry for them and think that they're totally innocent. So this is another appeal. And this is the kind of stuff that goes on. Now, again, it's not proving that they didn't do it because they actually admitted they did it. So these guys are guilty. But now they're trying to get them out on a claim that they had the right to kill their parents. Now, mind you, if mom allowed dad to get away with stuff, mom's not such a great person. But mom did not do this sexual assault if they even happened. So why is mom getting shot dead? I'm sorry, but if you won't believe this crap, this is not the way legal stuff works. You do not get to kill people because they made your life miserable. That's not a legal right. So that's the Menendez brother thing that's now happening. Let's see. Which one are we on here? Oh, is this in the Menendez brothers? Medication made them behave differently in court and seem different to the jurors. I don't know. I haven't examined the whole rest of the case. I do not know. She didn't stop the kitty bothering, but we don't know that it happened. That's the problem. And even if she didn't stop a crime from occurring back in the day, you cannot go back in when the crime is not occurring and blow people away. As far as I know, the rule here is supposed to be that you have to go to the police and file charges. You file a report with the police and they get to charge the parents and take them to court. You can't simply say, well, that's what happened to me back in the day and it was unpleasant, so I'm going to go kill them now. You can't do that. It's illegal. They committed first-degree murder, 100% premeditated murder. They deserve to be exactly where they are. I don't care what your excuses are. Now, mind you, meanwhile, while they're supposedly being touched, I don't even see any real major stuff. I'm not saying being touched isn't major, but I'm not seeing what I can't get a good, proper information on exactly the level of this. But meanwhile, one of them's off to the top college in the nation. One of them is playing tennis and becoming a tennis champion. These guys had very, very privileged lives. They had a ton of money and got a ton of opportunities. Now, could you say that in spite of all of this, the parents were horrible creatures and dad was nasty and mom just looked the other way? Could this have happened? Sure, it can. But it doesn't allow you to do a premeditated murder of people when the crime is not occurring. You have to go to the police. And all of a sudden, people want to say you don't have to follow the law if you think somebody did something nasty to you. You don't have to follow the law. You can't do that. You can't just go blow people away because of something you claim happened to you years ago. You can't do it. It's so outrageous. It absolutely is outrageous. And Deanie said his dad could be coming in and making him practice tennis at night. It could be. I don't know what that letter says. Again, we have a piece of a letter. What kind of crap is that? I want to see, And of course, this will be something that would have to be done in a courtroom situation. The full letter, and the full letter that is proven A, to be written at the time and wasn't something somebody created later, and that it's not a piece of a letter and then there's assumptions being made. I don't even know what that letter means. I don't think they were innocent, but I do think it should be something factored into their sentencing. What factored in? Do we have proof that the parents did anything to them? Do we have proof? And if the answer is no, then you can't do it. When we go back and look at Murder City and the 12 people decided to execute what was truly a serial killer, did they have the right to do that? And the answer to that is no. In spite of everything, the answer to that is no. You cannot take the law into your own hands. It's never permitted. And you certainly can't take the law into your own hands. You don't have any proof of why you did so. And they did not have proof, And now what they're doing, they say, years later, this is the years later claim crap, where people looking for notoriety will claim anything. Oh, yeah. And hey, he raped me too. Oh, look at me. I also was a victim. We don't have proof that happened. Zero proof. I'm sorry. If it happened to you whenever, you should have said something about it then. But it's not proof. So as far as I know, there's zero proof that the father was sexually assaulting the boys. There's just, at this point, zero proof. So it's hard to say. Now, mind you, I think it was Lyle, he was thrown out of the college for plagiarism. One of them, I think maybe it was the younger one, said something to a friend, and they went to the mother and said, oh, he said this. And she said, well, he's lying. Maybe he is a liar. Maybe he's a little psychopath. Maybe he's been telling stories about the family all along that are just not true. Maybe both boys are psychopaths, which, considering they premeditated a double murder, I'm going to say both of them probably are psychopaths. So why would you believe a psychopath? Why can't they be little lying teenagers and making up stories about their parents to get their friends to go, oh my God, oh, that's terrible. Maybe they thought that was fun and amusing. You can't believe this stuff. This is just not proof. So yeah, I'm saying Benny says, also, it's quite telling that both sons planned and did the killing. It's premeditated. They both have motive. Money, is more probably the motive than revenge. This is true. So if it had just been about their crushed little souls, why are they out there just partying like there's no tomorrow, spending a ton of money? And that's one of the things that did them in a court, because the appropriateness of their behavior was, well, inappropriate, shall we say. Let's see. Plagiarism. If I, as an ex-professor, yeah, I'm so sick of plagiarism, I can't tell you. But he got thrown out for plagiarism. And let me tell you something. It's hard to get thrown out of college for plagiarism these days. So if a Ivy League school does that, man, I don't know what the heck you plagiarized to get thrown out. That's crazy. Let's see. Two wrongs don't make a right. Well, not legally. It's just not allowed. That was him. Yeah, prescription medication caused him to seem unfazed in court, like he didn't give a crap. Yeah, maybe because he's a psychopath, which is where I'm going with it. So this is the kind of thing I'm just trying to point out. We don't often get the proper information when it's said, oh, these people are innocent, or this is what happened. We should all be behind them. And speaking of that, oh my God, remember when I did the thing on Bryan Kohberger, and I'm like Bryan Kohberger, who has been charged with murdering the 4 Idaho students. And I said, I believe this is still true, that I believe that barring a crazy jury, he should be convicted, because I think the evidence is sufficient for that. And I think that the defense attorney is already working on all the concept for all the appeals, which is going to be police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, this and that. I think they're looking at a whole bunch of money coming into the future for them to carry this on for the next 20 years. And I said, because one of the reasons I was saying, it's really great evidence on this guy. It's hard to believe he wouldn't get convicted even by a civilian jury. I stand corrected. My God, have I received a pile of emails and a pile of messages that guy is innocent, that there is no evidence against him, that the police are totally corrupt. And I'm like, of all the cases, I sort of understand when we look at I'm going to draw a blank here. Abigail and oh Jesus, I'm just trying. Somebody give me the names. The other one, the other major case. Why am I drawing a blank? Delphi murders. The Delphi murders. I see why people are more skeptical of that. Okay, I think they have the right guy, but I see why people are skeptical, because they've always believed that particular murder was something that happened through the internet, and that's never been proven. And then this guy that's wandering around is accused of it, and they say the evidence, the bullet and all that stuff is all, the casing, whatever, is nonsense. I understand why they're more skeptical of the Delphi suspect. I get that, but the Idaho guy, Kohberger, holy crap. I'm surprised anybody's questioning that. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his day in court. I'm not saying the prosecution doesn't have to prove it, but I'm just saying from the outside, I'm surprised that there's this huge bunch of people now, and there's these apparently Facebook pages are free Bryan Kohberger, save Bryan Kohberger, he's innocent, blah, blah, blah. They're popping up everywhere, along with the girls who are throwing themselves at him and going, I don't know why people think he's creepy looking. I just look at him and I want to make love to him. I mean, oh my God. I mean, those kind of people I expect, because we always have these narcissistic females who want to hook up with serial killers and think it's a cool thing. And, there's always those whack jobs, but let's put them away. That many people are saying that Bryan Kohberger is most likely innocent, and they just was standing behind. They want to fight for Bryan Kohberger. I'm like, wow, you're not even waiting for it to get to court and finding that they didn't present enough evidence and saying this. You're actually saying this before it even goes to court, which is just stunning to me. But this is a mentality we have these days. And it's like there's this odd thing going on that we want to find all these very guilty people like Stephen Avery somehow innocent. We want to find Ted Bundy innocent. Everybody, we want to find them all innocent, even though the evidence is stacked against them. And even though they're really usually not very nice people, Stephen Avery is a nasty piece of work. I'm like, who the heck would he? I mean, if he's innocent, that's one thing, but the evidence is heavy against Stephen Avery. It's one of the most valid convictions I've ever seen. And the guy's not even nice or attractive or anything else that would make you want to feel bad for him. But there's this whole trend in that direction. It's really crazy. Oh yeah, I'll say this about West Memphis 3. I understand more why they think the guys are innocent. I think they're guilty. My video is that they're guilty. But because of the way Hollywood came in and Johnny Depp came in and presented these guys as these innocent teenagers who were just being attacked, it's kind of like Luke Mitchell, because they like Metallica or black clothing, or they said they were satanic or whatever, that they were misunderstood teens. They were just being teens. And they because they manipulate things like I think Dr. Sandra Lean does, the way they manipulate facts and ignore facts and don't actually support things, they're able to convince people based on a whole lot of talking and a whole lot of fanciful presentation and sometimes really good music. Because I mean, Netflix did that with Making a Murderer. It's like it was so manipulative. It was so one-sided defense. There were tons of misstatements and facts that weren't facts. There were so many lies, just straight up lies. And people are like, oh my God, Stephen Avery's innocent. So West Memphis 3, I sort of get why some people think he's innocent. I do. Yeah, because I mean, they're looking at it from whatever point of view they're getting from the defense team, essentially. Oh, that's a good point, Linda. I believe that some people must be contrarians to any facts presented to them, somehow that makes them feel smart. That's a good point. And also, when somebody's been convicted, like I say, Luke Mitchell, you don't get anything. You don't get great camaraderie out of saying he's guilty. Certainly, it's not benefiting me any. But if I said today, man, can you just imagine? I'm stupid. I'm stupid. Because I was asked to look at this case. And if I looked at this case and read Sandra Lean's book and said, oh my God, Sandra Lean has worked 15 years. Man, this woman has done such great work on this case. This book just convinced me that he's innocent. I, as a profiler, stand with Sandra Lean. Man, would I be a happy camper today? I would have people gushing their love for me. And see, criminal profiler Pat Brown, she's the best thing ever walked. And suddenly they would find out that I had a master's degree. And suddenly they'd say I worked with the police. And suddenly they'd say I was brilliant. But if you disagree, that isn't fun. So it's nice to jump on board with the innocence kind of thing. And mind you, there are times when a person is innocent. And I stand by those cases where proper information has been presented that proves their innocence. Okay? I stand by that. I'm not against that at all, because good Lord, I don't want an innocent person to be in prison, and I don't want the guilty person to be out there harming other people. So, yeah. But thank you, Lord. It's a funny face. Yeah, there's a funny face. Oh my gosh, yes. Let's see. The silent defense. Well, he's already said not taking a plea. The problem I think he has is that I believe the evidence is fairly overwhelming. Just like Vallow, the evidence was quite overwhelming. There's not a lot of places to go with it. So I think sometimes, Lauren, just put in Kohberger innocent. You're going to start finding it. Believe you me, it'll be all over the place. Yeah, it's growing by the day. It's growing by the day. It's frightening. It really is truly frightening. Let's see what else I have to talk about. I was going to do the Beaumont Children, right? Okay, I don't want to forget that. Okay, I'm going to do one. I just want to say one other thing. I want to mention this guy. This guy killed his little sister, who's 6 years old, and her two cousins, who were like 6 and hold on, let me find it. Hold on a second, let me find it. Here we go. This case was just decided, and this case happened right down, like just a few miles away from me. I never heard about it, but the girl, she was 6 years old. She was stabbed to death in her bed, along with two cousins, aged 6 and 9, by her babysitting brother, 25, in their Maryland home. Mom goes to work, leaving her 25-year-old son watching the 3 little girls, and apparently he wanted to sleep and they annoyed him, so he went down and stabbed all 3 of them to death. And then he stayed in the home, and he confessed to the police when the police came. It took them 5 years to convict him. There was no question. Why did it take 5 years? Don't know. Why was this guy babysitting? I checked out his criminal record. He has none in the state of Maryland. So it wasn't like he was a drug dealer or anything else. But I don't know. Was he mentally off? I don't know. I can't find any information on what's wrong with this guy and why he did it outside of they annoyed him. But I felt really sorry for, especially the cousins, because everybody keeps talking about this little girl, the daughter that was murdered, the little sister, but almost nobody talks about the cousins who went there, not realizing that the brother was going to be watching them. But what just strikes me on this whole thing is this. Whenever we hear of a mother murdering her 3 children, everybody jumps on board to say, oh, she must have had some mental problem. What about this dude? Doesn't he have a mental problem too? I mean, why would he just kill 3 little girls and admit to it? Why? Why don't people jump on board to say this guy deserves a break? Send him to a mental institution. Why don't they say that? You know what he got? 3 life sentences and no sympathy. What's the difference? In my opinion, the mother is way worse. Why? Because he's not a mommy. He's not the person the children trusted and took, raised them and all that kind of stuff. He's just some brother who's living in the house, or maybe some uncle. But he gets no break. But a woman who kills her 3 children, she or her 5 children, she always gets a break. See, guys don't get those breaks. And let's say he did have a mental problem. I haven't seen that he heard voices or anything. I don't know what the heck. Can't find information on that. But Let's say he says he heard voices. Why doesn't he get a break? Why does he get 3 life sentences? I love there's kind of differences in these two things that stand out to me. So, yeah. Sandra is going to soundbite what you just said, Pat. Probably. And by the way, I'm not going to respond. I'm only responding here one time because you're the patrons, and I did see part of it. I didn't see the whole thing. I couldn't wait through it. But I do not object to Sandra Lean giving her debate on the story. I gave mine, she gave hers. I'm only commenting here of what I heard on that first thing, which I just think is nonsense. But I'm not going to go and do another video. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to keep fighting this whole thing. It's, it's already in the court of law. And it's not a case I'm fighting. Yeah, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. I don't have the rest of my life I'm not spending 15 years trying to prove he did it. So, but anyway, well, we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. He decided to kill them. No one should get, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm just bothered by that. But let me go to the Beaumont kids. This is something I promised I'd do, and this is going to be the last thing I do today. These are the Beaumont children in Australia. This is the most famous case, I believe, in Australia outside of there's another, the girls. I already did that, talked about that case. But let me find the Beaumont kids. Okay, here we are. All right, so these are the Beaumont children. What's very fascinating about this case, the parents aren't involved. First thing, so many times I do these cases, I go, parents, I think the parents did it. And this one, clearly, parents not involved. These are 3 little kids. One was 9, the oldest girl was 9, and then the other girl was 7, and the boy was 4. Now, here's what happened. This happened in 1966 in Adelaide, in a place called Glenelg. I can't pronounce it. Glenelg Beach. They disappeared from there in January 1966. All right. Police investigations revealed that on the day of the disappearance, several witnesses had seen the 3 children. So they were seen at the beach. So we know they got there. They saw them on or near the beach, and also in the company of a tall man with fairish to light brown hair and a thin face with a suntan complexion and medium build, aged in his mid-30s, also wearing, I think, swimming trunks. All right. Confirmed sightings of the children occurred at the Collie Reserve, which is nearby, and at Wenzel's Cake Shop on Mosley Street. Okay, so they were seen there, all right, on the beach, basically in the company of this guy, and then they were seen not in the company of this guy in a bakery, and then they vanished. The case received worldwide attention, and it is credited with causing a change in Australian lifestyles, since parents began to believe their children could no longer be presumed to be safe when unsupervised in public. And I do remember that when I was younger, of course, I walked to school when I was 6. Maybe I walked to school when I was in kindergarten or 5, and nobody thought a thing of it. And I do know that in my town, I moved from Richmond, New Jersey. That's where I grew up before I moved down to Virginia. I think I was only there through 2nd grade, so I was 8 or under, okay? And I lived in this lovely home up on this hill, and I was allowed to leave that home and walk the mile to school and back, but I was also allowed to leave that home to a main street, go down that street and down another street into the town and go to the stamp shop or whatever I'd like to look there at that age. This was the way people used to live. You didn't worry as long as the kid could cross the street. My mother taught me that, how to look left, how to look right, and how to look left again, how to cross the street, because she worried about me getting hit by a car, not being kidnapped. So we were allowed to go a lot of places by ourselves at a very young age. So when you look at this 9-year-old taking her, 7-year-old sister and a 4-year-old brother to the beach, you think, oh my God, how could they do that? But people did that. So what happened that day was that these kids lived with their parents, and the family didn't live far from the beach, a popular spot that children and many others visited. On 25 of January, Jim, the father, dropped the kids off at the beach before heading on a 3-day sales trip. out of town. Then on the next morning, on the 26th, they asked their mother to return to the beach. It was too hot to walk that day, so they took a 5-minute, 3-kilometer bus journey from their home to the beach. 5 minutes, so it's really close. The children, and they were supposed to return by noon. So so theoretically they spent a few hours down there. Nancy became worried, however, when the siblings did not return at either 12 o'clock, which was when the bus came back, or at 2 o'clock when the bus came back. And when Jim returned home from his trip early, came home early at 3 o'clock, he went up there to find the kids and could not find them. Unable to locate the children, he went back, found his wife. They both searched the beaches and the streets. They visited friends' houses. And at 5:30, they went to the police to report the disappearance. So basically what they found out was this, that they figured the children had been abducted and the concern by a sex predator of some sort. All right. So they looked and looked and looked, and they were looking for this prime suspect. Now, here's the thing about the prime suspect. They said he was in the company of this guy, and they were playing with him and appeared to be relaxed and enjoying themselves. The man also approached one of the witnesses, asking if anyone had been near the children's belongings as their money was missing. Now, this is very interesting because why was their money missing? Because the parents gave him something for a little snack, right? And then if he was going to abduct them, why would he want to present himself to somebody? But supposedly that happened. Then the man went off to change while the children waited for him. The group were then seen walking away together from the beach sometime later, which the police estimated to be around 2:15 p.m. So already they were late. They were supposed to come home at 12, but people saw them at 2 o'clock, which is 2 hours later. How would this guy have been with them? And obviously they were having fun with him and waiting for him to change. So they weren't scared of this guy, which is, to me, extremely important. And I want to point out why I think this is maybe indicative of something. And then that was, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That was it. Oh, they're walking away from the beach. I'm sorry, 12:15. 2.5 later, another witness saw, I'll take that back. 12:15, they were seen walking away from the beach. A woman later said she saw the children of the man carrying an airline bag similar to one owned by the oldest girl. I don't know if that one's accurate, so maybe it wasn't quite that long. Then they said this. They said that the oldest was shy and that to play confidently with a stranger seemed out of character. Investigators theorized the children had perhaps met the man during a previous visit or visits and had grown to trust him. A chance remark at home, which seemed insignificant at the time, supports this theory. Anna had told her mother that Jane had got a boyfriend down at the beach. Nancy thought she meant a playmate and took no further notice until after the disappearance. So in other words, she thought it was a little boy she was playing with, not an older man. Now, this is the last thing here. A shopkeeper at nearby Wenzel's Bakery reported Jane bought pasties and a meat pie with a £1 note. Police viewed this as further evidence that the Beaumont children had been with another person for 2 reasons. The shopkeeper knew the children well from previous visits and reported that they never had purchased a meat pie before. And the children's mother had given them only 6 shillings and a 6pence, enough for their bus fare and lunch, and not a £1 bill. Police believe the money had been given to them by somebody else. All right. Then there's some claim that the children were seen walking later, and that doesn't make any sense by themselves, because if they were with somebody, that was the guy who took them. Now, I see 2 things here. One is that they did trust the guy. So I personally think that when they went to get to the bakery, they bought the meat pie for him. They bought the pasties for themselves and the meat pie for him. He said, here's $1, go get that. And I think he told them, I'm taking you back to your house. I'll give you the ride home. I think they had to believe he knew their parents. Somehow he had convinced them that he was a friend of the parents or a relative or something, so that they thought he was safe. Otherwise, why would they be messing around with him? You know what I mean? Or going in his car or any of that stuff. But at 9 years old, a girl's told that, I'm your parents' friend. They will believe that crap. So I believe that he met them before and must have said something like, I know your dad. And, kids will give up information. Oh, yeah, our dad. Yeah, he's away on a sales trip. Well, that's why I say. And they say, your dad said to pick you up. Hey, dad's away. I talked to him and he said, to give you a ride home because it's too hot out here. I'll give you a ride home. You lost your money. Oh, you couldn't take yeah. The money's gone. Somebody took your money. Therefore, you can't take the bus home, can you? So I'll give you a ride home. First, let's get something from the bakery, and then I'll give you a ride home. That's how I think they were abducted, by someone they believed knew their family and was going to give them a ride because they didn't have the money for the bus. Although he could have given them money for the bus and not given them the ride. That's not how it works. So I think this is the guy that took them. Now, there's a whole list of suspects, which is why I'm not going to do this as a separate show. There's a million suspects, and none of them are convincing. They searched every place and all these creepy people's homes and all that and never found anything. Here's my theory with this. I think the problem is if somebody comes from a distance, takes the kids, and then returns to someplace a distance away, the police are not looking far away. They're looking close by, because usually your sex predators are close by. But in this case, I wonder, with the three of them being taken, whether he had a place to take them to, a private property someplace, because the bodies have never been found. They weren't thrown in a ditch. Where are they? Now, theoretically, I guess they could have been dumped at sea with a boat, but I believe he took them far enough away that nobody knew who he was. People saw him, but did not know who he was. And he didn't seem to be afraid that people, when he said, hey, and we take the kids' stuff, probably because they're trying to convince the kids that somebody else took his stuff. Hey, they didn't recognize him. He wasn't worried about being recognized. And if he'd been local, I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't have done that. So I think he wasn't local. He went a long distance away with the children and eliminated them someplace else. And that's why they've never found him, because they just don't know who the heck he is. And that's that. A horribly sad case, but sometimes that's how you get away with things. So that's my thoughts on the Beaumont children. So it would be unusual for someone to feed his intended victims. Not if you're trying to convince him to get in the car and how he's safe and all of that stuff. Remember, this is a pedophile. Come and see my puppies. Same kind of thing. Yes, I think they had met him before, but maybe only the day before. Maybe he was down there for a couple days in the area, and he went to the beach and saw these kids and then said, why don't you come back? Come back tomorrow. So same here, Pat, in Long Beach, California, 1952. Which case was that? Not for me. Off the top of my head, I don't know. Let's see. Tell me which case that is. I might remember it. Let's see. Let's see. Sounds more like a family friend or neighbor. I don't think so, because I think if that were true, he would have been recognized around that area. Number of people saw him with the kids. Nobody recognized him. The family didn't seem to come up with anybody, and they would have been at that person's house digging up the place. I just don't think so. I think it's somebody who pretended to be a family friend. I don't think he had to be one. Let's see. I have a secret password with my kids and grandkids. We change it whenever it needs to be used. That's a good idea. I mean, there's a lot of emphasis these days on making sure the kid doesn't go off with somebody who says, your mom is in the hospital, let me give you a ride. My mom's been hit by a car. But you see, even if you had the password, depending on the age of the kid, kids are not that bright. Okay, I'm telling you, kids aren't that bright. And people always assume the kid will be smart enough to figure these things out. And yes, some kids will, but an awful lot of kids won't. So you can't give them that leeway or allow them in a situation where, quite frankly, anything can happen. And I don't even know, even if you do everything, all it takes is one pretty clever guy just to confuse the kid and do whatever. So, good analysis. Thank you, Lisa. Better than spending hours looking at red herrings, I'm convinced. And that's why sometimes I say there's people who will do these cases and they'll do them for 2 to 3 hours, or they'll do a 10-part series. And it is red herring after red herring after red herring. And the fact is, unless they find the bodies of these kids or somebody confesses, and it's been, look how long it's been, it's not happening. It's another person who got away with it. And And I don't have that much to offer outside of what I just offered as to what I think could have happened to these kids. It's a real sad case. I can't even imagine being those parents. It's bad enough when you lose 3 children in a car accident, but to lose 3 children this way, wow. Oh, just awful. Yeah, I know the Snowtown, South Australia thing. That's another whole thing. Which I don't really want to get into that whole, that's a huge mess. And again, that's one of these things where there's so much information that unless I'm doing a book on it, I don't want to do it. Because a lot of the information is false. A lot of it's conjecture. A lot of it's just rumor. And it's really hard to get the information that is needed. Now, if people doing a documentary, they don't care about the truth. They don't care about the actual facts. They care about making a good show. And a lot of times people writing books aren't so concerned either, but I am. And I can't, I just don't want to get involved in something I can't validate the information. So yeah, I'll keep away from that one. Lauren says, I haven't heard the comment about the daughter having a boyfriend. That case is really sad. Your analysis makes sense. Well, it's the only one I can come up with, I mean, it's pretty simple, but, and I could be wrong because I don't have a lot of information, but I just don't think there's any place else to go with it. So yeah. So hopefully because I'm going to try to do a show on Friday evening because I'm leaving for Florida on Saturday to visit my sis. And I will be doing Hangout from down there, but I wanted to do the case file early. So I thought I'd do Australia and New Zealand. I haven't done it in a while, but I'm trying to find a good case because there's a lot of cases that they're like either so basic that there's nothing for me to talk about because, again, I don't do storytelling. So it's not like if I were a storyteller, I could do any of these cases. I could just tell the terrible story of the Beaumont Children. I could say on such and such a day this happened and show all the pictures and tell a great story. And people like watching those because they want to learn about the case in general. But I don't do storytelling. So a lot of these I can't do because there's nothing for me to analyze to any extent. So that's why I'm struggling. So hey, I've got, let's see, what are we on Wednesday? I got 48 hours and to come up with a really good Australia, New Zealand, Tahiti, Tonga, any place, Oceania, that whole area of the world, come up with one that I can do, that I have time now to analyze in this shorter period of time. And I'll do that one because I do like doing cases from around the world. I do. I like recognizing other countries, and every country has its famous cases and cases that are unsolved and that they like analyze. So I keep trying. So Peter Ellis. Okay, I'm writing that one down right now. Do I know this case? I might know this case, but I can't remember if I know this case. So I'll have to see if that one has something. The dingo ate your baby. I don't know if I want to go to that one. Oh Lord, with all the cases that I do that basically get me arrows in the back. Somebody's like, I try sometimes to have some case I can do without getting in severe trouble, but. Okay, so yes, it's about time to end the show. But just before I end the show, I will mention this one just because I think this is bizarre, and I forgot to do it last week, and it's a 1 minute thing, but I thought it's fascinating. There was just some weird crimes that happened, right? This happened in my county, Prince George's County, Maryland. What happened was a Prince George's County man. An estranged kidnapping and a hit and run case include a woman who claimed she was randomly abducted and driven around naked in a rental van for 12 hours, stabbed in the hand. And then so the woman said she was shopping and she was forced into a U-Haul van at knife point around 10 a.m., forced to get naked and rode around on the floor of the car and even got stabbed in the hand. She believed the man driving the van, 62-year-old Dennis Bell, was taking her to South Carolina, and she told police she was worried for her safety. He got arrested at 10 o'clock that night after he was chased by the police and was banging into everything. And he was supposedly, that this is the part that's just so bizarre. his public defender tried to claim that he was incapable of carrying out this crime. Why? Because he had just had hip replacement surgery less than 2 weeks before the time of the crash, because he crashed the vehicle too when the police were chasing him. And he could barely walk. In fact, he was supposed to get his bandages treated and removed today, but he couldn't because he was locked up in jail over the weekend. And so he's no stranger to the court system, having been arrested multiple times before while giving multiple aliases. So this guy has been in jail quite a few times and should actually not be out in public. But apparently, even with hip replacement surgery, you can't keep a bad guy down, you know? So criminals will be criminals. And sometimes, you know, people say, oh, they couldn't do that because they're disabled. Not so true. Not so true. So anyway, that was my last thing. Glad you came for the show today. And did you? The Beaumont Children, you asked for it before and you said you'd do it one day. Well, this is about as one day as I can get on it. It's just, I say, not too much to be able to do. So on that case, but still interesting and something to think about. So anyway, thank you for being here today. And we'll see what I come up with before Friday evening. I'm going to check out the Peter Ellis thing and see if that one will be a good case to do. So I'll catch you then. Bye.